Okay, just getting everybody in and welcome. I hope everyone, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to today's webinar, and I'm quite excited to have today's conversation. Um, my name is Chad McDaniel. I'm president of Execs in the Know, and I'll tell you a little bit about Execs in the Know in a minute if this is your first time joining one of our conversations. However, today's topic and really important discussion because the future of customer feedback through generative AI and VOC, voice of the customer, paramount. And what I really tasked our presenters today is conceptually we get this, but I want them to help open our eyes, help with some critical thinking, and really look at some of the possibilities that can and do exist in this particular topic. So, Reagan and Jackie, I'm so thrilled to have you join. I'll introduce you here shortly, but the kind of mind share that both of you have is just amazing and impressive. Thank you. And I'm really going to ask our audience that we learn as a community together. So as we're going through the presentation today, if there's certain questions you have or certain things that you're hearing, please put your comments or your questions in the Q&A box. Love to hear from you. And also I'll make sure we get your questions answered. So again, I just really want to say thank you for your time and joining us because I know how busy all of our schedules are. So we've got 60 minutes. It's going to go real fast. We're going to let some time to go in there for Q&A. But again, your comments throughout are appreciated, and please engage with us as we have this important and necessary conversation. If this is your first time to Execs In The Know, welcome. We are a corporate CX sharing community, about 8,000, predominantly, I say the playbook for the CX leader for service and support. Just go to our website, execsintheknow.com. If you go into the Knowledge Center tab, or you go into the events tab, all sorts of rich information that are there. We are a corporate sharing community. We call leaders learning from leaders. So many of you connect together and share best practices together. Absolutely wonderful, and welcome to the community if this is your first time. One of the best things I would recommend is join our Kia platform. This is our private online platform. I see it like a conversation on steroids where you can reach hundreds of other members, ask questions, gain insights in a very 100% private, corporate only platform with very informative and very rich conversations. One of the things I'm real excited about is we've modernized the platform. It's got a whole new look and capability. So if you haven't been in the Kia platform lately, log back in, check it out, and I hope you like some of the new design elements and capabilities of the platform. Thank you to our corporate board. We may have a number of you listening today. We have a lot of people joining us today. Just a shout out to our board. Really, they help guide the conversations. They steer a lot of the kind of topic-based conversations like we're having today. So again, all of the people on our board are very much about helping our industry achieve and sort of pay it forward respectfully as a true customer first culture community. So thank you to all of our board members of Execs in the Know. We appreciate everything you do. I'm real excited. I'm going to invite everybody. We have our next in-person gathering. We host our national summit called the Customer Response Summit twice a year. We're going to be in this wonderful city called Nashville, September 20th, 22nd. Don't miss it. You can go onto our events website or tab of our website, and you can see all of our speakers, what we have planned. Our gatherings are very personalized, very rich in discussion, and you meet some really incredible people. If you'd like to come out, you can send me a note, chat@execsintheknow.com. I'll work with you to see what we can do to help, but we'd love to see you out of our next live event together for the 2.5 days. Okay, enough about us. Reagan and Jackie. First of all, Jackie, I noticed that you and I didn't get the memo. We both put blue on today, and you look dynamic. So thank you. Reagan, I'm glad you did not have blue on today, but thank you for coming outside the blue shirt day. But sincerely to the community, I've had the pleasure to work. I feel like I know Reagan and Jackie very well. I consider them friends to me personally, but also great advocates to our industry and to our community. The utmost respect for both of you, Reagan and Jackie. And really what I wanted to do today, before we do quick introductions from you, is really challenge you in some of the critical thinking that I alluded to in my earlier comments. So Reagan, why don't we start with you if you want to do a quick introduction. I know how busy you are, so getting some of your time is grateful and appreciated.
Chad, thanks very much. Appreciate that. So hi, everyone. I'm Reagan Miller, and I look after the global data and analytics practice and also the CX Technology Solutions Group at Concentrix. That's a portfolio of 3 businesses, technology businesses that deliver solutions including CCaaS, conversational AI, bots, messaging, and the VOC practice, which we're going to talk about today.
Awesome.
Great. And hi everybody. I'm Jackie Potts. I lead our Voice of the Customer division under Reagan at Concentrix. Very passionate about all things customer feedback management, Voice of the Customer, and super thrilled to be here today. Chad and Reagan have heard me talk. It's my 4th day back from maternity leave, so the idea of having an adult conversation is thrilling, and I'm glad to be here with all of you guys to do it.
So congratulations, Jackie. Now, everyone on the call is wondering, boy, girl, any details quickly you'd like to share and make an announcement?
Sure. It's a little boy. His name is Archie, and he's number 3 for us, our 3rd and final act. And he's a sweet guy. Thank you for asking.
3rd and final act. Well, welcome to the Execs In community, baby Archie. All right. Let's lean in. You know, Reagan, we got to unpack this conversation, and we really have got to, as a community, continue to think of insightful ways to approach today's topic. So I know you want to set it up with a couple of slides, so I'm going to let you set the stage here, and then I look forward to how we're going to lean in. Okay, welcome.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Chad. Really appreciate it. And let me just first say, it's always a great privilege to spend some time with the amazing Execs In The Know community. It's been, what, Chad, more than 10, maybe 12 or 13 years now that I've kind of been a part of the family here. So just want to thank you for everything you do, and thank the broader Execs In The Know community. In fact, speaking of that, so early this year in March, I had the privilege of speaking on a panel on the main stage at the Execs In The Know event in Austin, which was fabulous, by the way. And we were talking about using data and analytics in the pursuit of amazing CX. And at the very end of that, I took about, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes, and I asked a few questions of the audience. And there were, I don't know, 200 or 300 people in the room. And the first question I asked was, now remember, this is like March 2nd or 3rd of this year. The first question I asked was, show of hands, how many of you have heard of Chat GPT? And mostly every hand went up in the room. And then I asked a follow-up question, how many of you have actually used Chat GPT? And about 40% of the hands went up. So there was a fair amount of people that had, gone in there and played around with it. And then I asked a question, show of hands, how many of you believe that generative AI is going to have a significant impact in the CX business in the next 12 months? This is March 2nd or 3rd of this year, and only about 4 hands went up. And that was very telling to me. And it was telling that the technology itself is very, very new, and it's sort of difficult to believe there could be this kind of hype cycle, if you will, of this amazing technology that would really impact all of our lives in some really meaningful way, and certainly impact our business in a meaningful way. And if you go to the next slide, now just a few months on, one of the hallmarks of a real trend is to watch where capital is flowing. And it's clear that this technology and the value that it's going to unlock is very real and very now. Forbes is predicting that this is going to be almost a $500 billion market in the next 5 years. McKinsey is predicting some astronomical total economic impact, larger than the GDP of most countries on the planet. So we need to pay attention, and we need to be in the game, not just watching, but actually taking a position and playing the position. And in the next slide, this is a poll that Execs In The Know did with its community last year, and it was really about AI. It was just a little bit pre-generative AI, And one of the questions in that poll was about the channels where customers want to interact, and asking about where AI would be deployed in order to drive efficiency, effectiveness, and so forth. And what's remarkable about this is that no channel was left out. It's very clear that there's this expectation that AI technologies are going to be pervasive in CX. And that's what today's discussion is really going to be all about. So in the next slide, before we dive into the subject matter, just a quick reminder for most and an introduction for some about Concentrix, which is this cohesive group of capabilities and expertise, including our incredibly talented staff around the world, our award-winning technology, and over 20 years of CX domain expertise that we believe is really unmatched in the industry. And our winning formula is really centered around our ability to design, build, and run everything we do. And we see other companies in the space that do piece parts of this. There's design consultancies, technology providers, systems integrators, managed services groups, all contributing. But our unique ability is to create value and outcomes start to finish. And that's what our clients tell us really sets us apart. And in the next slide, when it comes to AI, we've been designing, building, and running AI for many years with tons of success stories, from agent impacting use cases to patented AI technology, digital and cloud engineering, AI-based native automation builds, partner activation, including hyperscalers and even some niche tech companies. So AI is not new to us in any part of the CX business. So it's an incredibly natural motion for us to incorporate generative AI into our everyday flow of innovation. That said, in the next slide here, we understand that this generative AI area, it's still very new territory, and risk management is of the utmost importance to all of our brand leaders. Most people are familiar with the concept of hallucinations, and that's generative AI giving like this very competent answer to a question that is actually false. And there are reasons why this happens, but it can happen, but when it does happen, it makes it feel very unsafe for all of us. And it makes it feel potentially unsafe for our customers when, brand trust is everything. And then the minefield of regulatory and security risks only seems even greater with all the unknowns associated with generative AI. And then there's this new topic of ethical AI that simply must be dealt with. So getting the governance of generative AI right from the outset is incredibly important. And the next slide. So, I like to say that AI makes things easy, but AI is hard. You have to get the data engineering right, the systems integration, the experience design, the governance, the automation and event orchestration, the infrastructure design, compute power, and managing all of that. It's really degree difficulty very high to design, build, and run any of these generative AI solutions. And at Concentrix, we believe that our role in this ecosystem is to be the last mile of all of this, delivering the end products and solutions that change outcomes and drive real value for clients. And look, I can assure you that there are no shortage of use cases. In all the companies where this audience works, you're bound to have a ton of ideas about how to use this coming at you, coming internally, probably developing some yourself. And one of the challenges that we have is making sure, and this is for all of us, is making sure that we don't leave a trail of these, failed science experiments on the road to success. But that said, we're intensely focused on what we think are the right areas. And one of those is absolutely the voice of the customer space. I'm not going to steal Jackie's thunder, but we are incredibly excited about an innovation we've been working on. So I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, who I really believe is one of the most influential voices and thought leaders in the entire voice of the customer world. She's going to share more about that. So Jackie, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Reagan. So to Reagan's point, where we're going to take you guys next on the conversation is we want to dive into how we at Concentrix are seeing generative AI transform voice of the customer landscape. And I use the word transform very intentionally. We don't think it's going to just change the voice of the customer landscape. We believe it's going to transform it, specifically around the possibilities that we can untap as it relates to how we curate CX intelligence. So how you in your role curate CX intelligence for the decisions you need to make every day, as well as how CX intelligence is curated for your leadership and their decisions and your stakeholders and their decisions. So if we move on to the next slide, I promise you this is going to look like a commercial, and it's not. There's a way bigger point to this. So for those of you who may not be aware, Concentrix is one of the strongest and most reputable vendors of voice of the customer tech and services. So one of the areas, though, when you peel that back, where we always receive the highest marks from, whether it be analysts or clients that work with us themselves, is our ability to help clients take technology and data and use it to drive CX improvement. So yes, we've got wonderful tech that has amazing features and functionality, but our real superpower is being able to help our clients harness that advanced tech, harness the data that they have to make meaningful impact on customers, which leads us to why we're here today, the topic of generative AI. Reagan mentioned this. Part of our responsibility as a leader in the voice of the customer space is that we want to develop and are developing a vision for how Gen AI should be applied to transform VOC programs, and then architect those capabilities into the solution set that we offer to you so that we can allow you to tap into that transformation and drive outcomes. So what I'm going to share next as we go through and path through the rest of the conversation is a sneak peek into our vision at Concentrix for the future of VOC, how it leverages generative AI, and what our team has been working on to build those capabilities into our solution set. So if we go to this slide here, I think the question is great. I'll have you go back one, Ellie. This question on the slide is the $1 million question. How will generative AI transform VOC? This question guides our R&D, it guides our road mapping, it guides the strategy conversations that we have internally. We want to start with that question. And there are a lot of different ways that you can answer and take that question. We could go down many different paths. There are very tactical ways we could address the question. And if you go to the next slide, it starts to bring some of that to life. So one very tactical way that we could address that question, and all of you could do this today as soon as we get off the call, you could go use ChatGPT to script a voice of the customer survey. It is an incredibly efficient path for being able to start a survey design process. So you input criteria like what you're seeing here on the screen, the types of insight you need the survey to produce, and then in a minute, less than a minute, you'd have a draft for consideration. So yes, is there still like smart human intervention that's needed to review and adjust and quality check? Absolutely. But if you tactically think about the time that you can save to curate survey design ideas, curate the latest best practices, better understand modern language and ways to ask customers questions about their experiences with your brand, generative AI is one of those dimensions that can help you transform that. But that's tactical. Where we wanted to focus the discussion today is kind of move away from the tactical and focus on the more strategic impact that we see Gen AI having on voice of the customer initiative. So if we move on to the next visual, the big vision here is that generative AI will actually be the enabler that companies need to create enterprise level, and I don't use the term enterprise lightly, you're going to hear that a lot from us today, enterprise level systems of intelligence and action that draw upon voice of the customer data among many other data sources, and Reagan's going to speak about that in a minute, to curate insights that are going to help you take action far faster than we've ever been able to do before. So like if we think about an example, a real tangible example, imagine within seconds being able to know that there are customers between the ages of 25 and 35 who interact with your brand. And if they've had a poor experience with you, they're only willing to buy your products and services at a 20% discount. Imagine knowing that insight within seconds. And then imagine immediately being able to say, you know what, I'm going to offer that product at a 20% discount in these regions for this demographic and be able to take that action instantly. So that insight, that type of insight is not going to take months to curate anymore. It's going to happen within minutes and seconds. And the ability to then go offer that product and change your price points for different segments and different retail outlets can also happen in minutes and seconds. That's the big vision. This enterprise system of intelligence and action that curates insights, makes customer-centric business changes at a velocity that we haven't experienced before. And so we look at Gen AI as the rocket fuel to the vision that allows us to finally be able to bring this to life. And the visual that you're looking at, I think one of the biggest parts that I don't want to be lost are the vectors of intelligence that are required to feed this engine and that this type of engine will produce. And I wanted Reagan to speak a bit on the vectors of intelligence related to the vision.
Thanks, Jackie. So, what Jackie's talking about here is this much broader view of what's happening in our business. If you roll the clock back maybe 20 or 30 years and think about like primary market research and secondary market research to understand, what's happening with my customers, how do they feel about a particular product, or relative to another product, what's happening in a particular market, should I sell this in the Southeast or the Northwest or another country? And so, going from primary market research to this ability to use surveys, which is where the industry has been for quite some time. And in the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of bringing together other kinds of data, because our customers are talking to us every single day by the millions and millions and millions, right? They're calling into our contact centers, they're doing things on the website, or maybe chatting with us or interacting with the bot. So there's a lot of data sitting out there, but the ability to kind of pull it all together into one place and then utilize it for some purpose is also relatively new. But now generative AI is doing this kind of flattening the curve. And we like to use the word democratizing analytics, but it's really democratizing intelligence. And so our view is that in this new world, with this concept of enterprise intelligence as a service, that there are these 5 vectors of the kinds of intelligence you can garner from all of this data that now is sitting in one place and has this amazing facility to give us these insights. And Jackie's going to show that in just a second. The first one of those vectors is customer, meaning what are my customers really thinking? What are they feeling? What are they saying? What are they doing? What's happening with them? The second vector is markets. And again, that goes back to like what's happening competitively. Are my customers talking about my competitors' products? What can I learn from that? What is happening in a particular region or an area? And there's a lot of market intelligence that can be garnered. The third one is product. And I think this is maybe one of the most overlooked opportunities for an enterprise to use all this data to understand, how do my customers really feel about that credit card or that last feature release that we put out for our software. And it's just this sort of endless supply of this immediate and really vast and sophisticated intelligence that we can get regarding our products and services that we offer among brands. The third area is process. And so think about, processes that get broken. I'm trying to make my payment, but that process is broken. I thought I could, but I can't. I have to go to a different channel. I have to switch channels. Think about a process, or in a healthcare example of, claims, for example. And so the ability to garner this process intelligence is very, very rich now. And finally, employee intelligence, because we know absolutely that the way our employees and the enterprise interact with our customers has a huge impact on customer sentiment, satisfaction, lifetime value, et cetera. So these 5 vectors then can really all sort of come together, and we can enable a variety of constituents within an enterprise to go garner intelligence and curate intelligence really from all this data using this new technology.
And building on what Reagan just said, if we move into the next visual, what we do is kind of peel back the layers of the onion a bit. And I haven't used that term in 3 months for sure. But the next visual really starts to break down this big idea of enterprise intelligence really into more tangible components. And what it's really meant to demonstrate is the complexity behind making this big idea work. And frankly, what our teams at Concentrix are working on to bring that to life in a really consumable and tangible way. So I want to walk you through this at a high level. This is it's a blueprint for how enterprise intelligence works. And on the far left, in order for this vision to be brought to life, you've got systems of record or data sources that have to feed the enterprise intelligence system, of which voice of the customer is a critical and a leading input. And all of that insight is going to be transformed along with many other data sources and analyzed using machine learning, applications of AI, decisioning engines. And these dimensions together create your enterprise system of intelligence. Once that data is analyzed and next best actions are determined, you then start to move into what we've got kind of in the orange part of the slide, which are the systems of action, the ability to take that intelligence, that AI is producing for us and say, go do this in this channel where our customers are interfacing and make an immediate change. So where we're really going to focus on today, the rest of the conversation primarily, is helping you get real examples of what does the new age of system of intelligence look like. So as a user, if you're logging in and you want to leverage generative AI to create insight for you, what does that look like as it relates to new systems of intelligence? So moving on to the next visual. This visual is an example of how that blueprint would manifest itself for a user like you. So generative AI will create systems of enterprise intelligence that change how you access insight, how you get insight, and the level of intelligence that's available for you. And the best way to think about this is you ask a question, you get incredible intelligence. You can get incredible insight right back to you, almost like a single pane of glass that's sitting on top of all of the data that Reagan just spoke about. So imagine logging into your Voice of the Customer platform, and instead of poking around in dashboards and filters and trying to find answers, and it takes you 30 minutes and you've got your stakeholders calling you, you type in a question. So example, show me the percentage of customers right now that are at risk of churning in my mid-tier segment and show me how that's trended over the last 6 months. You have an answer, boom. And as your data sources expand behind the scenes, you can ask more complex questions. You get richer intelligence, like thinking back to that slide that we just showed and all the vectors of intelligence that Reagan spoke about. And we're going to go through a couple other examples, but Reagan made a great point earlier that this looks really simple. And the whole concept of where we're headed at Concentrix is the single pane of glass concept. Ask a question, get an amazing insight. But this is really hard to do. And so Reagan, I didn't know if you wanted to kind of talk about enterprise intelligence as a service and some of the other componentry required to make the hard easy for users.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I think the just a quick kind of a plug for other use cases related to generative AI in the world of CX. This enterprise intelligence as a service capability is something that we're developing, and it's going to have a very particular use, but there are many other use cases where generative AI can be used to support customer-facing examples, right? Think bots and think other ways that we can organize data for customers and organize visuals for customers, and think content creation examples from a marketing perspective, or website, again, in that pane of glass, how do we present the right thing for them? There are lots and lots of advisor-facing or agent-facing types of use cases to help agents be much more effective and efficient with customers when they're interacting with them in real time. And there are some sort of deeply embedded technological capabilities around optimizing certain processes, the way connectivity types of technology will work. So think CCaaS and conversational AI and so forth. So there's a lot of other things that are happening in the industry. We're very focused on this today, but I did want to just do a quick commercial for some of the other things that are happening both in the think tank and in some of our R&D right now. This concept of enterprise intelligence as a service, Jackie said it really well. To get this right, you have to be able not just go get the data, because we all know data sitting in a lot of different places. And even if your enterprise has been through an exercise and you have something that looks like a unified data warehouse environment, or you feel like all your data is together, still getting it available and ready for use by these large language models, that's something that's relatively new. And again, degree difficulty, not necessarily very easy. The kind of second component in order to deliver enterprise intelligence as a service is, in fact, the world of large language models. And this is something people are learning a lot about pretty quickly here. But I will tell you, it's not easy. Instrumenting and tuning the models to make sure that you have the right kinds of domain expertise and domain focus, instrumenting and tuning around the kinds of responses that you want it to provide, or actions that you want the large language model to be capable of taking. And then there's an entire QA process behind large language models, because you have to make sure the answers are going to be right. And so it's very complex and frankly new world. If you jump out there and ask for 100 resumes of people who have 5 years experience in large language model building, instrumenting, and tuning, you're not going to get any of those. They just don't exist. The people aren't there yet. And another area we talked about earlier was governance, incredibly important area in terms of thinking about how you do this enterprise intelligence as a service. So, and we'll talk about automations here in a second. So there's a lot to it. And the last thing I want to call out is there is a CX design element to this that is very, very important that I think maybe being overlooked in some places. In the example of show me the customers who are churning in my mid-tier segment that Jackie just gave. And once you know that, then you might be inclined to go take a particular action. You might want to go and maybe change the offers or do something along those lines. Think about the upstream and downstream impacts, not just of changing your process, changing your product, and the complexity of having to do that. But anytime we go into the CX ecosystem and we start turning knobs and dials and pushing levers, there's something else that's going to happen upstream, something else is going to happen downstream, and sometimes those are unintended consequences. And so this capability of looking more broadly and more holistically at what's happening in the CX ecosystem relative to changes we're going to make relative to the intelligence we garner is incredibly important. So those are just a few thoughts about enterprise intelligence as a service and why it's important to be able to get all those aspects right in a very holistic way.
I appreciate you sharing that, Reagan, because I think if we go to the next visual, we've got more screenshots for you of what these concepts look like for a user. And what we wanted to be really prudent about was not showing you all these incredible screenshots that look really easy without talking about all the complexity that goes on behind the scenes. So on this next visual, I'm not sure if this is a build because my screen looks blank, but here it comes. These are more use cases where if you imagine yourself as a user of a voice of the customer platform, what else is possible with the application of generative AI? So we gave you the example of logging into your platform and asking a question. You could also log into your VOC platform, ask it to create charts for you. Tell it to build a chart of the top 10 emerging themes that are coming from your chat transcripts. You want to figure out how to reduce your chat volume. Well, you can ask generative AI to build a chart for you. It can happen in 15 seconds, right? So a ton of time that you can save through the application of generative AI in your platform through that use case. It can also create narrative summaries for you and customize briefings for your leadership team that would immediately summarize your most prominent CX issues over the last 30 days. So Reagan put out a blog. If you guys have not seen it, I highly recommend reading it, but he put out a blog a couple months ago about the concept of an executive briefing. And you think about the president of the United States gets an executive briefing by the CIA every day, right? Obviously, we're talking about a different thing with CX here, but that's the idea. The idea is you log into your VOC platform and leveraging generative AI, your executives could have their daily CX briefing at their fingertips. You, as the owner of your line of business or your customer experience program, could have your own daily briefing of here's what's happening in the business, here's what you need to think about today, this week, and here are the actions that you need to take. So incredibly powerful stuff. And then another use case is obviously it can, using generative AI, it could push emerging themes to you through alerts. You're on top of issues before they even have a lasting impact or a minor impact on brand perceptions in your customers. So net, in summary of some of the use cases we've just looked at, the vision that we're arcing toward here is to be able to put that single pane of glass on top of multiple data sources and insight sources, overlay those powerful analytic tools, leveraging Gen AI so that you can curate more meaningful intelligence about your customers in very different ways with much higher velocity. So I'm going to move on to the next visual here. I'm going to hand it back to Reagan. And what Reagan's going to talk about is give you a bit more of a teaser on what we call the next horizon of generative AI. We talked a lot today about systems of intelligence, but there's more to it. There's systems of action and how you use Gen AI to drive that orchestration component. So Reagan, with that, I'll hand it back to you for this section.
Thanks, Jackie. A great overview of systems of intelligence. So, we really do think that the VOC market is going to be meaningfully disrupted in the coming months. And I want to talk about this kind of next horizon that we see, which is these systems of actions. And what our enterprise intelligence solution will do is help decision makers at every level know what they need to know. But then what? Then you have to do what you need to do. So this next natural step is to begin to automate and orchestrate actions relative to the intelligence that you garner. And if you go to the next slide, there's some examples here, right? One might be, let's say, for instance, an airline traveler. is late to a destination, and your generative AI has modeled that the best way to remediate is to deposit some loyalty points into their account and then send a text message to them letting the customer know that you did it. In the future, you would just, generative AI would tell you, hey, I think we should do this. Here's the likely set of outcomes, and then you just sort of press a button and it goes and it just does it all. Or your intelligence tool might tell you that a particular channel is underperforming. And so you simply tell it, hey, go make the changes, maybe in your IVR routing to remedy that. And it just goes and does it. Or in this example on the screen, generative AI might determine that you want to price match a customer based on their lifetime value and automatically put that new thing in the customer's cart, and then it sends them an email letting them know. So this idea of connecting intelligence to actions in this very natural and automated ways, it's not just going to be a fast follower of innovation in this space. We're actually seeing it begin to emerge already and right now. And we have our eye on it very closely. And I think that it's the next natural step that really all of us should be paying attention to. We can go to the next slide. And so all of this ultimately should lead to better CX outcomes. We believe that generative AI is going to give CX teams who manage VOC programs and the rest of the stakeholders and decision makers in organizations give you the ability to have this intelligence across the entire enterprise at scale, at speed, and then use it to inform interactions and decisions. This elevation of customer experiences will in turn, we believe, deliver even stronger customer experience and even financial outcomes for the brand. And you'll notice that CX teams are still very much a part of this equation, right? It's not like this is going to go replace a whole bunch of people. CX teams are now going to be able to focus their time and attention on more value-added kinds of tasks, right? And assisting generative AI, and again, resulting in even stronger CX outcomes. So the key here is to use this new technology to unlock value. And we hope we've shown today how we see this happening in the near term with enterprise intelligence as a service. And we're really excited to see where this is going to go in the coming months and years. So with that, Chad, we'll turn it back over to you. Thanks.
Yeah, great start in the conversation, and a couple of things are definitely coming to mind. One, if I was running a VOC enterprise organization for the brand, what am I thinking about these possibilities? What concerns? What are my thoughts? What are the possibilities? And I mean, really, as a community, I'd like to come together. I know a lot of familiar faces that are on today's call. Thank you for joining us. I don't want to just ask questions. I want to hear your questions, and I want to bring us together as a community to kind of what's on our mind about this. I mean, I have a lot of great notes here that I can go through, and Reagan and Jackie, I can kind of go back and ask, but I really would love to hear from our community. What are we feeling and thinking in some of the possibilities or just general questions? So while the community is thinking that, and hopefully you'll put some comments in the Q&A box for me, Reagan and Jackie, I want to ask you this. What industries right now, based on everything you just presented, do we see kind of early adopters, or are there any? Would it be in the fintech, like the banking related stuff? Where are some of the early adopters that you guys are seeing from an industry perspective, or do you look at that differently?
Yeah, no, so we actually do look at it that way. Chad, what I would say is that unusually, this technology is being looked at and adopted across all industries right now. And I think it's because this wide variety of use cases has presented itself. It's also because AI, as I said earlier, it's really not new. There's lots of people who understand, lots of enterprises that understand how to deploy AI in a variety of ways in their organization. So the language of AI is relatively mature in most organizations, and so this kind of new next advance is kind of a natural fit. So across industries, we see all of our customers asking about it right now.
And if there's anyone in the audience that there's a certain, industry or brand that you find have been using this and leveraging it, throw their name out there in the Q&A box, because we want to lean on early successes in what they're doing there. But it's interesting to watch. Reagan, and if we were to take away some of, let's say, the issues around getting data ready and LLMs and some of the other areas, let's say that was all there and aligned, or that was obviously important things that need to get done in advance. But what are other general hesitations or concerns? Is it the ethical or something to do in security of information or where that data source, or what are some of the other related issues that may prevent some of the capabilities of this next gen VOC?
Well, today if you go into ChatGPT and ask it who the Queen or King of England is, it will tell you it's Queen Elizabeth. And of course, we all know she's passed on. Lord rest her soul. So ChatGPT is wrong, and so it will hallucinate. And sometimes even with more complex kinds of questions that you can ask it, it'll make something up, be very confident in its answer, and it's just sort of dead wrong. So I think that this concept of hallucinations really has gotten into the psyche of a lot of people, and it just puts this risk factor out there. So that's one. The second one, you brought up ethical AI. This is really very important because in the construct of these kinds of things. So for instance, if we're developing enterprise intelligence, let's say for a decision maker is deciding where they're going to offer some financial instrument or how they're going to do it. If generative AI is informing that decision maker to do it in some way that maybe crosses some kind of ethical boundary, then whose fault is that? Is that the AI? Should the decision maker have known better? Was there not good enough governance? So those kinds of things are the things that our customers are talking to us about and that we're thinking about. So on that risk side, I think it's important. Then there's the question of intellectual property that everyone's really wrestling with at this point in time in terms of who does what and who owns what. So I think there's a lot of considerations around governance right now, which are occupying a lot of airtime in absolutely all the right ways. But those are some of the kind of the risk areas that we're talking to our clients about.
And Chad, I'll add on top of that. It actually goes to a question that I just saw pop in the chat box. It's a different spin on it, but the idea too, and you and Reagan both mentioned it, is with the application of generative AI, it changes where CX teams can be focused. And I think sometimes people go to, oh, that may not mean I need as much headcount, right? But what it really means beneath the surface is you have to upskill your CX team to be focused on different things. So they may not spend as much time on chart creation and PowerPoint creation and insight interpretation. And instead, they may spend more time on operational change management and cross-functional change management and heading up task forces and committees that are putting changes in place. And so if you think about the skill pivot that has to happen between someone who is doing analytics all day long and creating PowerPoint presentations to helping them become more of a force for change in the organization, that's a skill pivot that the organization has to make. So I wanted to use the opportunity to address a question and also add on to what you had put out there related to other things companies should be thinking about.
Yeah, good points on all. And audience, thank you. I'm going to get to your questions here real quick. I have one more from my perspective. I always think, I try to think forward too. And it's interesting, Reagan and Jackie, if we were to have this conversation in 2 years from now, where the landscape may look like and where is it ultimately going to be? But I also think of customer acceptance, customer adoption, customer confusion. If half the industry is doing some of this and half is not, or I'm just trying to think where and what kind of behaviors could we be getting to from consumer expectations depending. So it's a bit of a predictive question, but again, I'm just wondering, I know you two would feel the adoption is going to be in 2 years from now at a much greater take than it is today. Any comment on that or just thought? Where would we run into any certain pitfalls or any other things? Or do you see a different vision in 2 years from now?
Well, the death of the contact center agent has been talked about a long, long time, and we kind of just don't see it that way, right? I think, and there's a question here in the chat about AI replacing people. Look, we know that consumers mainly want to get their problems solved. Right? And they want to do it in an elegant, low effort way. that's the simple way to put this. What's going to happen from a people replacement perspective with AI? I don't think anybody really knows that. Is it going to happen to some extent? Probably. How much? We just don't know yet, right? And even the efficacy of this technology is still, to some extent, as yet unproven. But there's just enough people that understand it well enough to know that this is probably really going to work. And so that's why you see so much investment flowing in. That's why people are predicting it's going to be such a big market. As far as customers are concerned, Jackie, you probably have an opinion, but my take is, again, customers just want to have their problem solved or get that next thing done. And to the extent that this technology or any other can do that in a more elegant, more efficient, more effective way, then I think the technology is going to be adopted by consumers.
Yeah, I agree. And something else, sorry, Chad, something else that came to mind for me was, I think all of us have seen like companies put out CX index scores and state of CX. And one of the trends that I think has been pervasive is either customer experience index scores are staying flat or they're going down. And if you really interpret that, it doesn't necessarily mean that customer experience is getting worse. Oftentimes customer experiences are getting better. It's that expectations are completely different. And so I think the application of generative AI is going to answer questions quicker. To Reagan's great example, it's going to solve problems faster. It's going to surprise and delight more quickly. And so we need to be cognizant of how we're changing customer expectations and the increased pressure that puts on brands to keep up and to leapfrog and make sure that you're staying ahead of the curve, because your customers are now going to compare you to the company that's doing it the best. So just another thought as we think ahead to what this is going to do for customers.
Great comments. I'm going to get the audience now. And I just say, Reagan, 10 years ago and 10 years forward, at the end of the day, customers just want resolution in a fast, efficient, most effective way. And all of us as champions of customer success in our organizations, we own this possibility. We have to be looking at it in all sorts of ways and not sitting on the sideline. If it's learning, becoming a student of education, trials, whatever it's going to be, we have to embrace and learn together as our roles depend on the success of this. So let's go to some of the questions. I know, Veronica, you asked this question earlier towards the beginning, but are surveys becoming obsolete? Customers don't seem to be burnt out on surveys. I don't know if customers do seem to be burnt out or don't seem to be burnt out, but are surveys becoming obsolete? Any opinion there? I got an opinion, but
we do on this one. We feel pretty strongly though. Our opinion is no, but they're changing. But surveys are changing, right? In terms of where and how you should get feedback, to the conversation today, how that feedback is leveraged to drive real change and how that's done more efficiently. And just a funny story on this, I think, to drive the point home, is there was a company a couple years ago that put out a bunch of research on the fact that the survey is dead. And the whole report was built on research that they had done through surveys to large companies. So no, surveys are not dead. We within our voice of the customer practice, we don't necessarily see a massive decline in response rate across the board. We have actually seen those increase when you apply modern digital best practices to how you design and deploy these surveys to be more conversational, to be more modern. So that has not been our experience. And we've got kind of a plethora of best practices that we could go deeper on there. Veronica, that was a great question, if that's of interest.
I would just add here that, again, this is, the idea of like humans coming out of these equations. I don't know, not so much. I mean, we're just going to always need to be connecting humans with humans, right? To understand what people are thinking, feeling, and saying and doing.
Yeah, I think, Jackie, you nailed it. I mean, I'm a consumer. We all get surveys, and it's just all how it's approached, how it's customized, how it's tailored, how it feels, that gets me to engage or not to engage. The old can stuff is not real successful for me. So Thomas, thank you. Thomas, I know you'd asked about how do you ensure that premium customers are not handled by a bot, but get directed access to a human. I hear that a lot too. So Thomas, thank you. A good question. Quick thought on that, Jackie or Reagan.
I have a thought on this, and Thomas, I don't know if this is going to answer your specific question, but as it relates to the application of customer feedback and customers needing to get answers. There are new ways of leveraging customer feedback to route customers differently for help. So we have ways inside our technology when a customer comes in and gives us feedback or tells us what they need, through the application of data and knowing who that customer is coming in the background, based on what they say, we could either route them to a live human, click to call, bot, or we could give them kind of a static message on what we want them to do next. But that's all leveraging the application of data behind the scenes to know who that customer is, and then ensure the technology has the appropriate routing to be able to push the customer to the next best action. So hopefully that's answering your question to a degree, but we're doing that a lot actually within the voice of the customer practice right now, related to closing the loop once we get feedback from a customer and how we're handling that within the feedback experience itself.
And I think it's just something we got to keep an eye on and continue to be looking and measuring, especially when it comes into our premium customers. And again, that experience and what's taking place functionally in some of the process alignment that is being created in the organizations. I don't know if everyone in the audience can see the questions that have come in. Jackie and Reagan, I know you can. When you look at Lisa's question about can you address the computing cost of generative AI models? I don't know if there's an easy answer to that, but any thoughts you can do?
Hey, Lisa, great question. So I think there's a lot of TBDs around this at this point, but it's a very, very good question that providers are thinking about. One thing is for sure, providers that figure out the calculus behind the compute power that's required to run LLMs are going to be the ones that are going to do better. And the essence of this question is how do you architect these capabilities, particularly like the bot front end, but even with the enterprise intelligence concept and solution, there's a lot required of compute power that's required in order to process the question and get the right answer. Some of that has to do technically with the instrumenting and tuning of the large language models. And again, some of that has to do with the way you could potentially layer. So there's some ideas out there. The other thing I like about this question is it's asking the right question about, is there real value here? Because we can do all the cool stuff we want to do, but if it's super expensive and it's going to add cost and not have a return on investment that makes sense, then all of this is for naught. So great question. Still lots of TBD at this point in time. And I'll tell you that there's a lot of people thinking about that right now at a lot of places.
Yeah, let's stay close as a community and continue to see where we can collaborate and share. And if we need to have more huddles around that specifically and sharing, I think our Kia community, our online platform, is a great way to continue to share share insights in this particular regard. Reagan and Jackie, as you continue to work with your client groups, if there's certain things you're seeing or bubbling up, keep us posted, and we'll make sure we get it out to the broader community where we can. Natalie Crosby, Reagan and Jackie, she's one of our corporate community members also. And Natalie, thank you for your question. I think the answer is yes, but I'll ask it. She's asking you guys, is Concentrix working with telecoms and omni-channel solutions to build these into these type of platforms? I think the answer is yes. Possibly, I would suggest Reagan or Jackie, if you could connect directly with Natalie, that would be great. So I want to assume that's correct, but if you can connect with her, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, that's a fair assumption, and Natalie, look forward to talking to you.
Okay, so I'll be happy to get it there. Eric, thank you for your question. I know we're running close to time, so I'm going to just kind of fast forward quickly here. Eric had said that you'd mentioned AI will not replace people, but rather allow people to focus on more complex tasks. Hear that a lot, in some of the general sentiment. Eric's asking, what are some of these more complex tasks that CS professionals could focus on? You probably have a number of ideas there we could pick out. And then the second part to the question is the value add of this generative AI for most companies to drive down costs and render staffing unnecessary. No or yes? You want to take a run at this, one or two of you?
Yeah. So I'll
go ahead, Reagan.
I'll take a run at the replacing people. It's such a good question. I think, when we think about like what are people going to work on in the future, it's almost like the invention of the sewing machine. Before the sewing machine took a lot of time to stitch things up. Suddenly with the sewing machine, you can stitch things a lot more fast. So, what did that leave people doing? That left people with opportunity and time to spend time designing the things that the people were sewing, and so that sort of increased scale. That's one example, maybe not the very best, but it's one example of the kind of things people are going to be doing. I think that CX design is about to really start to take off. And I think that we're going to see the way people interact with channels is going to become very fluid. The need for the ability to talk to a human is going to become very fluid and very easy, and that's not going away. Let's be very clear about that. But how that looks and the kind of conversations you're having with the humans after you've interacted with some form of technology is going to be very different. So I think the design piece is going to be very important. I also think that the data engineering is going to be very important. And this backside of automation and orchestration is going to be this sort of imaginative space where people can say, well, what if I did this based on this input? Then what would happen? And so that's, prescriptive analytics, for example. So I just think there's a lot of sort of working within this new reality that's going to create a new set of kinds of roles and responsibilities with very heavy emphasis on the design side.
I agree.
Jackie?
What I'll add to that is, Eric, it's a great question. To Reagan's point, we've actually done some work here to look at like how are the skill sets of CX teams changing as technology becomes more effective. We've got a whole white paper on it, so I will send that to you after this. But as we talked about earlier, what CX teams spend their time on can change. So I would expect like more work in organizational change management. I would expect more work with cross-functional action planning. I would expect more work with executive alignment and corporate communications versus maybe some of the tasks that the team is working on right now. So net, we've got a lot more that we could go into, Eric, if it's of interest, but I'll send you some information and follow up to this that you could read that may go deeper.
Well, let me wrap up on this and a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to ask our brands that listening to today's episode, either live or recorded, as you continue down the path in your trials of generative AI and VOC, would you reach out to me at Execs In The Know? We're always looking for brand practices and ideas and collaborative and sharing. Let's stay really close as a community through this over the next 12 months. And please keep me posted with some of the initiatives that you folks are taking and considering and looking. I love to talk with you about those and collaborate together. So please do that for me. I will also say that I'm not one to endorse, but I will say to our community, I do see Concentrix as truly a leader in some of the design and thinking of what we've discussed today. I know Reagan and Jackie, they're happy to talk with you, no expectations, but at least to kind of plug into some of the creative mindshare. We should leverage that capability. So if you want to reach Jackie or Reagan, reach out to me. I'm happy to put you in touch. Some great mindshare that we've got to fast forward and learn together. I will say that I hope to see you in Nashville. We're going to be together for 2.5 days. It's a fantastic gathering of content and discussion. I thought today was really helpful and useful, opening up perspectives and sharing some ideas and concepts. So Reagan and Jackie, I know I asked you to come help on today's conversation. Thank you for making the time of doing that. This is not going to be a one and done. This is probably one of many conversations, Reagan and Jackie, we need to continue. But if you'll do me a favor and continue to help us and stay close, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay. Well, I wish everyone a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your July, and we'll see you at one of our next gatherings. Until then, stay well, and thank you for joining today.